Hi guys, it's Amy from Now Polished Baby 90. Welcome to today's video, birth and pregnancy stories. So recently when I was doing some updates and things, I thought I would chuck a couple of mum videos into my channel. If you're not from my channel normally, I normally do nail and beauty videos, but I thought it's helpful, I think, to have birth stories out there. I love birth stories and I love telling my birth story and hearing other people's experiences, so I thought I would just document it, and also I'm probably going to forget in like 20 years time, so I will always have this evidence. So we're going to go through both children, and I have 14 minutes of footage, so let's see if I can get it done in under that. I hope so, but I like to talk. So my son Austin was born in 2015. He is 3 3/4 now, and this is going to be his story first of all. So I had a normal pregnancy up until about 31 weeks when I started to feel low movement one evening. Went into hospital, had all the checks done, and they discovered that my sugar levels were rocket high, and therefore I received a late diagnosis of gestational diabetes. If you don't know about that, it's basically where your body can't break down the sugar like it is when you're not pregnant. So it's a condition, and it goes away after you have the babies, and you're normally fine. So I had that diagnosis quite late on. It was a bit of a shocker to me, and all of a sudden the last 6 weeks of pregnancy went so fast, from kind of having that at 31 weeks to doing blood sugar measurements, to then having to adjust my diet, to then having to inject myself with insulin. It all went really fast, and then before I knew it, they induced most people with gestational diabetes at 38 weeks. So I went in at 38 weeks exactly to be induced with him. The way they normally do inductions, again, I'm not a midwife, I don't know. I've been led to believe you normally receive some sort of tampon to soften the cervix, and then you receive a tablet after a prolonged period of time, internal tablet to start things off. So for some reason, when I had Austin, I was in the 3-month window, I now discover, where they weren't doing the tampons. They'd had to recall the products and they weren't doing them. So I went in, I didn't know any of this obviously, had the tablet put in, and this was on a Friday about lunchtime, and nothing really happened for maybe 5-6 hours, and I started to get period pains, but not like contractions, literally like, oh, I might be coming onto my period. So I'm going through, and then they were going to give me another tablet, and then I got told that the labour ward was shut. There was no more beds, they had a queue of people, so unless I went into labour naturally, they weren't going to give me any more tablets. So I went to bed, woke up the next morning, and then I get given another tablet. Similar thing sort of happens after about 5 or 6 hours. I get those sort of period pains again, but then on repeat, come through, labour ward is shut again, so you can't have any more tablets. So at this point I'm a little bit more, I'm starting to have mild contractions by that Saturday evening, but again, they probably would have given me something, but the labour ward was shut. So they gave me a sleeping tablet, and I went to sleep. I woke up the next day, came in, they said to me, basically, you have normally 4 days from going into hospital. You have to have the baby within 4 days. It's kind of like their rules, I guess. So they said to me, look, we really need to get this going, and we really need to get this moving. So what we're going to do, we're going to rest you because you're really tired. So I got rested on Sunday until about 5 in the evening, and then they gave me another tablet. Now this time this worked pretty well, and by like, I don't know, like 8 or 9, 10, I was having contractions, but I was having what they call like double contractions, so there was no rest. So instead of contraction release, I was continually contracting. A doctor came in to see me. They were a bit obviously concerned about the fact that I was having kind of like a funny turn, I guess, to the tablets. So they burst my waters because I was about 1 or 2 centimetres dilated, and they took me through to labour ward to be monitored there. When I turned up there, I was in a lot of pain because obviously I've been continually having one contraction for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. So they said to me, look, you're really tired. Would you like to have an epidural? You can sleep, and then we'll wake you up again in a few hours and you'll feel a lot better. So I said, fine. Had the epidural. From the minute that epidural touched my back, I felt fantastic, and I couldn't feel anything, and I went straight to sleep. I don't know, they were obviously checking on me periodically through this, so I don't know how long I solidly slept for, but I would say that I slept off and on until maybe 6 AM the next morning. The midwife checked me, and I don't know how many centimetres I was at this point, maybe 4 or 5. I was progressing slowly, so they tried to give me a little bit of Pitocin, and the midwife was like, oh, I'm sure it won't be long. The midwife's changed over. Then I start to realise about lunchtime that they're a bit concerned, and the doctor came in, and basically he was worried because I wasn't really progressing anywhere. we were coming towards the 4-day deadline that they have, and I guess the longer that the baby is going through this, the more risks you have. So they brought in some scrubs and they said, are you open to cesarean if you have to have one? I said, yep, of course, whatever I need to do to get the baby out is absolutely fine. But then we did have some progress and things started to move, and I ended up having him at 6 p.m. You'll find out with the next one. I think I've got a funny birth canal because both of them got a certain point and then kind of got stuck a little bit. So being shattered and them I'm pushing but we're not really moving anywhere. They just put the ventouse suction cup onto his head, and with the next contraction he just came out. So it was more of like, to me it feels like that they just literally need to like straighten and then just go, this is the way you're coming, out you come. And that's what happened with Austin, and he was born £8.9, 2 weeks early, in October 2015. And I just remember being so exhausted. Also during the end of my labour, maybe like for the past, like maybe like the last 6-7 hours of it, they noticed that my temperature was going up and my heart rate was going up, and same with Austin. So they did start to give me a course of antibiotics, and when he was born, after about half an hour and they did the regular checks, he came out very healthy, scored all great, and they took him to neonatal. My husband went with him, and he had put a cannula in his hand, and he also received antibiotics for 5 days, as did I. So I was in hospital for just over a week. So 5 days after having him, we had every 12 hours we had to have antibiotics just to clear up that infection that we contracted. And I'm presuming it's from having my waters burst and then taking such a long time to give birth. And then I know a lot of other people that have been induced have had similar stories of it taking a really long time and having some sort of complication. And I said to someone a couple of days ago, if you go into labour naturally, people's stories are a lot different. So I would say if you're anyone out there that's going to get induced, that has been induced, and it's a rougher time. I think I've thrown it away now. On the paperwork they gave me about being induced, it said that it's a more painful birth. So I'm gonna wear that as a crown. That is a more painful birth. So yeah, it was a long 4 days of stop-start labour, in and out, this and that. It was a rough one. So we speed forward to January 2019. I'm pregnant with my daughter. This time they treated me like I had gestational diabetes from the start, just because it's like 90-something% that you're going to get it again. So I went through to the diet control and regular sugar readings, and I did need insulin again with her. So they made the decision again to induce early. I think if I hadn't had to have insulin, they would have let me go a little bit longer, is what I kind of got the gist. So I went in at 38 and 3 days this time to be induced, and this time I had the tampon. So they put that tampon in to soften and get everything going. On the Monday lunchtime, I had the tampon put in. So they kept that in there for 24 hours. After maybe 16 hours, I woke up in the middle of the night, maybe 2 a.m, feeling contractions, and proper contractions, like they were contracting and relaxing, not like a period pain, it was a full-on contraction. So I was wandering around and I was doing loops, and then that felt like the longest, like 4 or 5 hours of my life, because they were very, very short-staffed, or a lot of things were going on, and they were just like, just need to wait till 8 o'clock, wait till 8 o'clock, if you need anything, just wait till 8 o'clock. So at 8 o'clock the midwives changed, and I had a new midwife. She was amazing, and she gave me, like, we started going through the pain relief. So she gave me paracetamol. By kind of lunchtime she'd give me Oromorph and codeine, because I was feeling them quite regularly. At about 3 p.m. she said to me, I think you're about 3 or 4 centimetres, let's burst your waters, then you have to go to labour ward. Because I think she was a bit worried that labour ward was going to get closed again, and I'd had previous experience with this. So yeah, burst my waters and I walked through to labour ward, so that kind of shows that how I felt was much better. They did opt not to give me that tablet, which they could have done, because I'd had the double contractions with Austin. They said, look, the tampon's working, we'll take you through, and we'll get going. So I'm having gas on air, I get through to labour ward, and I don't know, this is maybe like 5 o'clock. And they say to me, what do you want to do? You're about 4 centimetres dilated. Would you like an epidural? I'm tired. So in my mind, I'm just thinking, when I had Austin, I had a nice sleep. So I'm going to have an epidural, have a nice sleep. And then what they tend to do is like wear it back. So when you start to push, you can feel it a bit. So I said, we'll have an epidural. I get there. They give me the epidural, and it makes a tiny bit of notice, but not a lot at all. So he comes back, the anaesthetist checks it again, says, oh no, that's definitely right, gives me some more of the drugs. Still no use. Midwife's change. She comes around, the first thing I say to her is, my epidural's not working. So I see a new anaesthetist, he's looking at it, he says it looks great. So he goes off, I think, to get more stuff, to do a new one, to take it out. But then the midwife checks me and she's like, you're 10 centimetres, that's why it's not working. So I got given it too late, essentially. And I don't think it's anybody's fault. I think I literally went from like 4 to 10 in like 2.5, 3 hours. So I don't know. When I talk about labour and birth now, I don't want to say that I didn't have any drugs, but I had a smidgy of epidural, but I could still feel my legs and I could still walk. But all that I kind of felt was a lot of back pain, and I felt like the natural urge to push a lot more than I did with Austin, and that was a lot easier. I found the whole like pushing part a lot easier with Andy, until we hit that wall again where they just start doing their own thing. So I started to panic because I knew what happened with Austin. She calls the doctor in, the doctor says like, look, if you've had Von 2s before, let's do it again. She puts it on and same thing, except for my body literally like pushed Andy out. They said to me, don't do any contractions, we're going to get it all set up, and my body just was like woof, and got her out. Because a lot of people say that if you have like a normal, like natural labour, that your body kind of does half the pushing for you and you don't really need to do anything, I've heard. So she came out, she was £7.9, so she was a whole pound lighter than Austin, but everything was much better. I felt a lot more with it. I was up and walking a lot sooner. So overall I would say that Andy's birth was much better because I was less tired. I knew a lot more what was going on. I knew what I was doing, I guess, a bit. And she was a smaller baby, so that made it all for easier. And with her I went home 2 days after giving birth. You have to stay in to have sugars measured for 2 days after having a baby with gestational diabetes, both you and baby. So everything was fine. They gave her a tiny bit of sugar about a couple of hours after she was born because she was getting low, so they just preemptively gave her some sugar just to top her up, and after that she was absolutely fine. So yeah, two very kind of similar, because I had the gestational diabetes and the inductions both times, quite similar kind of births in a way, and then not in others. But yeah, that is my 2 birth stories. Hopefully I didn't rumble through that quick. They're my birth stories. That's how I got my children into the world. However you do it is all good. I think that's the thing just to say. If you're pregnant and watching this, this is kind of my story about a bit of a different labour, about having the inductions and everything like that. But however you get the baby out, cesarean, natural birth, water birth, home birth, however you do it, you're a hero, basically, is what I try and tell that to everybody. Anyone that goes through labour, pregnancy and birth, you're heroes to me. However it ends or starts, however, you're all good. So let me know your birth stories and birth comments down below. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you soon.